You may include herd and growing quantity of human beings vow to bring their flesh consuming recently, or cut it out generally. The frequently forms portion of a bid to be improve, bring their ecological effect, or believe pet well-being. The tendency is partially thanks to initiatives such as Flesh-Free Mondays and Veganuary. At the identical period, a quantity of documentaries and top-profile suggest of vegetarianism include allocated the capacity benefits of consuming less than flesh. But include these sentiments had any impact on the land? Which we do aware is how world flesh intake has enlarged quickly above the history 50-year. Flesh manufacture present is almost 5 times high rather than in the previous 1960s, of 70 millionth tons to more than rather than 330 tons in 2017. A big cause for the is how down there are lot more than human beings to nourish. Above how time the planet people more than rather than dual. In the previous 1960s down there were about 3 trillion of us, and present down there are more than rather than 7.6 trillion. Time people is portion of the history, it doesn't completely expense for why flesh manufacture enlarged 5-fold. Else key element is growing incomes. About the planet, human beings include be richer, in the world ordinary revenue more than rather than treble in part a age. While we comparison intake through various countries we see how, characteristically, the richer we are the more than flesh we take. Down there are not fair more than human beings in the planet, down there are more than human beings who can provide to eat flesh. We see a precise connection in riches while looking at patterns of flesh intake through the planet. In 2013, the largest latter year accessible, the US and Australia crowned the tables for yearly flesh intake. Near New Zealand and Argentina, both of countries crowned more than rather than 100 kg per man, the counterpart to on 50 chickens or part a cow every. In reality, top levels of flesh intake can be seen through the western, in largest countries in West Europe overwhelming among 80 and 90 kilograms of flesh per man. At the some end of the range, lot of the planet's poorest countries eat really slight flesh. The ordinary Ethiopic consumes fair 7 kg, Rwandans 8 kg and Nigerians 9 kg. The is 10 times less than rather than the ordinary Europe. For such in cheap income countries, flesh is yet really lot of opulence. These figures present the sum of flesh per chief accessible for intake, but do not expense for any meal vein at household or on the store story. In fact, human beings eat lightly less than flesh rather than the, but it's yet a shut estimation. It is precise how the richest countries eat a lot of flesh, and such on low incomes eat slight. That has been the instance for 50 years or more than. So why are we jointly consuming so lot more than flesh? The tendency has been substantially managed of a increasing gang of medium-income countries. Quickly increasing nations love China and Brazil include seen considerable economical increase in latter many decades, and a big growth in flesh intake. In Kenya, flesh intake has modified slight with 1960. By difference, the ordinary man in 1960s China consumption less than rather than 5 kilograms a year. By the deceased 1980s the had rising to 20 kg, and in the recent few many decades the has more than rather than tripled to above 60 kg. The identical item happened in Brazil, wherever flesh intake has nearly dual with 1990, passing nearly all West countries in the trial. India is one noticeable exclusion. Time ordinary incomes include tripled with 1990, flesh intake hasn't accompanied fit. However, the sum of flesh consumption in India has remained little. At less than rather than 4 kilograms per man, it is the minimum in the planet. The is potential to be partially downward to culture factors for several in India, consisting not consuming specific types of flesh for sectarian reasons. Lot in Europe and Polar America say they are hard to cut downward on flesh, but is it work? Not very. On to statistic. Latter information of the Joint State Division for Farming, USDA, suggests flesh intake per chief has in fact enlarged above the recent few year. Time we may believe how flesh is proper less than famous, U.S. intake in 2018 was shut to its highest in many decades. It's a such image in flesh intake in the EU. Time West intake of flesh is stable, or lightly growing, the types of flesh corroded are change. The tool less than red flesh, bovine and pig, and more than poultry farming. In the US, poultry farming now accounts for part of flesh intake, up of a block in the 1970s. These types of replacement could be nice news story for public health and the environmental. In several occasions, consuming flesh can be advantageous. Mild quantities of flesh and milk can enhance human beings' public health, especially in reduced-income countries wherever diets may absence kind. But in lot countries, flesh intake goes far for main dietary benefits. Substitute chick for bovine or ham could be a favorable move. Compared to chick, bovine has everywhere in the band of 3 to 10 times as lot effect on earth utilize, water supply and hothouse gas emissions. Pig is sometime in among the couple. Next, wherever flesh intake is stable and balanced through countries would need main changes. The would indicate not just a change in the types of flesh we take, but as well how lot substantially, flesh would include to be more than of a opulence once again. On the chunk editable by Eleanor Laurie.